For the big story tonight, I want to talk about an important and complicated issue that I think is being a little misunderstood because of some poor headlines and commentary surrounding graduation requirements for Oregon high school kids. So I got this email from Karen that I think pretty much summarizes the general misunderstanding. She said, friends from other states are asking us about a bill that Governor Brown quietly signed, allowing high school students to graduate without being able to read and write. Now, first, I want to explain why that simply isn't true the way that she phrased it, and then we'll get into some of the details. And I'm going to start with this. If a student can't read, or if a student can't write, they're not going to be able to pass their classes. And if they fail their classes, then they don't get to graduate. So that part's just not true. But you can kind of see why some people would jump to that conclusion. Let's check out a few headlines and dissect them a bit. Yahoo, for instance, they said, Oregon governor signs bill ending reading and math proficiency requirements for graduation, which is close, but the bill doesn't end the requirements, it just postpones them. So that's not entirely accurate. Even the Oregonian, who I have a great respect for, wrote, Governor Kate Brown signed a law to allow Oregon students to graduate without proving they can write or do math. Again, kids do have to prove that. They have to pass classes in writing and mathematics, so it's a bit misleading. And then you get commentaries like this. This is Leo Terrell on Fox, a radio host, a civil rights lawyer, and a former high school teacher. Listen here.
The three basic necessities in life is to read, write, and count. And they're saying you don't have to do that any longer because we want to make sure you pass. It is a worthless diploma.
So, parents out there with kids in Oregon schools, do you think that your kids' diplomas are worthless? Of course not. Of course not. But that does not mean you have to agree with this new bill. So let's get into the details. For one, there seems to be this belief that the bill came out of nowhere, that it was quietly or secretly signed by the governor. But this has been in the news for more than a year now. First, the testing got suspended in March of 2020 when the pandemic closed our schools. Then, in February of this year, lawmakers introduced this legislation to extend that suspension until 2024. It then passed in the House. Then it passed in the Senate. Then it got signed recently, which wasn't a surprise because there was never any indication that the governor was planning a veto. So let's all stop acting shocked by this. Just because you didn't know doesn't mean it was a secret. Instead, let's try to understand what this bill does and what it will do. Starting at the beginning, since 2009, high school kids in Oregon have taken a test their junior year to assess language arts and math. So reading, writing, and counting, as some people put it. It's a pass-fail model, and you have to pass to graduate until the pandemic happened. During the pandemic, they got rid of the test and they used primarily grades. Lawmakers like Lou Frederick, who is a former teacher, thought this would then be a good time to reassess the entire testing model by putting the whole thing on hold until 2024 and developing a new testing strategy. Here's how he explained it to me.
They didn't get the results of the test back. The teachers didn't get the results of the test back until the next year started. So who was using it? It was primarily a statistical situation. It was not so that you could say to a child, you're not learning your fractions, we need to teach you to learn your fractions. It was saying, we've got a group of students who may not have learned their fractions. That's all. It didn't go to the student, it didn't go to the teacher to really help them at all. A test is supposed to help the people who are there, in my view. That's what I think the students should do. So I would adjust it so that we are actually seeing immediate results and that the teachers and the students and the parents can understand what's needed.
So is this a test for the kids, or is it a test for the schools? Because if they're getting it the next year, isn't it to assess how effective our schools are at teaching reading, writing, and math?
You want to be able to do both. You want to be able to do both. And the problem was, that's not what was really taking place.
Is there a fear we're going to be sending kids into the real world and graduate them when they don't have the skills to succeed?
You're making an assumption here that's also a black and white issue that I think is a wrong way to do it.
What, the teachers aren't going to be able to do their
jobs? We're going
to
be teaching that anyway.
Right.
The students and the teachers are going to be working on these issues anyway. They're not going to stop. They're not going to say, oh, well, we don't need to do that anymore.
But just like every teacher or every student, every teacher in school is different. So how are we going to know if they're doing a good enough job?
Well, we're going to be evaluating teachers anyway. We're evaluating that whole system on a number of levels.
So to boil that down, the people who supported this bill didn't think the old testing was working and are comfortable using primarily grades until 2024 to assess if a student is ready to graduate. But are grades good enough alone to make that assessment? I got this email from Dana, and she said, I would really like to hear from college professors, their opinions of the results of this decision. So that is exactly what we did. I interviewed Professor Patrick Burke from the College of Education at PSU, someone who has been paying very close attention to this entire argument since the beginning, considering a lot of the Oregon high school students that graduate end up in his class.
Did you ever hear a response that you felt was adequate as to why we should stop assessing this for the next few years?
See, what this does in some way, let me put it this way, I hope this is clear. If you take some of these independent measures away, what measure do you have left? Well, you have grades. So what we know about grades, in addition to how they fluctuate from teacher to teacher, is they set a minimum bar. If I only have grades, I can graduate from high school with nothing but a D. I would ask, is that in the best interest of the state of Oregon? Is it in the best interest of the students, the 350,000 students that we serve, to say that all we expect of you is a D?
Burke also thinks that the testing data is vitally important to understanding the overall toll of this time period of the pandemic on our kids. See, years from now, when we look back at this moment in time, wouldn't it be useful to have testing data that helps us to better understand how our kids fared, with comparative data, with numbers to look at? Instead, when we look back, we're going to have testing data from 2019, we're going to have testing data from 2025, but there's going to be a black hole in between.
I think in this particular case, we need to distinguish between responding to the pandemic and dismantling a system without the appropriate study and taking the feedback loops offline that teachers really need.
You think we need from now until 2024, it's going to take that long?
If we're going to do it well, yes. If we want to do it quickly and we want to buy a built-in test from somebody else, no. You could do it off-the-shelf kind of thing, sure. I am tired of the off-the-shelf stuff. It has not worked for us.
Hopefully now you have a little bit of a better understanding of this topic, but of course there's a lot more to it. So let me know if you have other questions or you think that we should be considering other parts of this whole discussion. Email us at thestory@kgw.com or use Twitter and the hashtag HeyDan.